Sorry, it has to announce that. I know we're not starting for another minute, but I just wanted to start recording. How is everybody? How you doing, Shelley?
I'm good.
Good.
I feel like I'm kind of hanging on by my fingernails, but things are going good. Yes.
I think that's a common thing with moms. And you're doing a lot. How are your school classes that you're teaching?
They're going really good. I really like them. And I like it because my kids are in it, so it's like it's just as a form of, schooling them in the best ways that I think are available to us. So
Awesome.
It's going good. The other day, who was with me? I think it was Allie, and she said, "Wow," because I was talking to her about how I pray for my students, and then she said, "Wait, how many students do you have?" So we added them all up because I have these at our little junior school that we do. I have 3 classes of PE classes, and that's really doesn't take a lot of prep from me and stuff. It's just fun. We play the games and do stuff. The only hard part is that how my feet weren't working, and I had some physical things that I didn't get to play with them. So that was hard, that I just had to, yell at them and then not get to participate. But I have 3 classes of those at our school, and we only have 3 hours. Most moms just teach 1 or 2 classes, but they have me do all 3 PE classes, and there's 25 kids in each class. So when we added those up, that made the total go up. I was like, well, I guess I have 75 PE students, but.
Wow. And then do you teach another class as well, or?
Yeah, then we do this Monticello school where I teach history and science to some, and then I have my seminary, and then I have my little basketball and volleyball teams that I coach. So that's all. Yeah.
You easily have more than 100 students.
Yeah, there's definitely more than 100 if I count all those PE kids, but the PE kids, they cross-reference, like 3 of them. Several of them are in my early morning seminary class, so that's fun. so they mix, they cross. I have a lot of kids that I get to be around.
Wonderful. So, all right, let's start. We have a new student today. Trista she's taken on a lot with what she's doing. And she called me this week, and she just says what has happened is she has become the sole teacher at the school that she started. And so she wanted to gift her semester that she's already paid for to someone else. And she tried to find somebody and couldn't. And I just asked my friend, Lindsay Wright, it's Tracy's friend too, if she would like to come. And she said she would. So, and here she is. So we want to welcome Lindsay to our class. And I'm really personally grateful because she has such good insights, and I'm excited. And I know she's a very extremely busy mom, just like all of us. So this is taking on added stuff, but she was already studying from the great books anyway. So I figured this can replace it for just a little bit. Excuse me. I'm still COVID-y. So I wonder when it's just going to go away.
Never.
I know. It just seems like it. But okay, so Trista was supposed to say the prayer today. So I asked Lindsay if she would say the prayer, and she said yes. So we'll go ahead and have Lindsay say the prayer, and then we'll kind of introduce you, Lindsay, to everybody. Okay, thank you.
Our dear Heavenly Father, we are grateful for this day that thou hast blessed us with. Grateful for thy Son, Jesus Christ, for all that he makes possible. We're grateful for this opportunity that we have to learn and discuss and grow together. Grateful for Julie and her willingness to mentor us and guide us through these readings and to help us to become better thinkers and better people. And we ask you to please bless us with thy spirit, help our minds to be clear and our hearts to be open. And we say these things in the name of Jesus Christ. Amen.
Amen. Thanks, Lindsay. I know we've done this at the beginning of the year last year, but let's just quickly say our names, where we're from, and a little bit about us. So I'll start. I'm Julie Greenman. I live in Kaysville, Utah. And a little bit about me. I'm going to have 13 grandchildren at the end of May. I have 11 now. And I don't know if I told any of you this, but I found out a week ago that one of those little pregnancies is going to be another girl, which is, I think I told Tracy and Lindsay. I'm so excited because I only had 2 granddaughters and 9 grandsons. 9 grandsons. You can imagine what my house is like. And as they grow, it's going to be crazy. But Alyssa's going to have her second child, and this time it's a girl. So I'm really excited. And then I'll get to find out what Megan has in about a month. So I'm excited. Okay. Who wants to go next? Tracy's eating. So we'll go to Shelly.
Okay, I'm Shelly Wright. I am here in Kimberly, Idaho, just outside of Twin Falls. And we have 6 kids. And last year, one was on a mission and Brinley was making plans to go to college. And I thought, oh, this is going to be crazy. They'll be all gone. And now Jace is back and he's living here. And Brinley decided to run at CSI. So she doesn't live, she lives in town with her team and stuff. They live in an apartment together, but she's here a lot. And so I still feel like we have all the busy stuff going on with all 6 different kids, but yeah, that's us.
It's fun. Jolene.
I am Jolene Richmond and I live in Camas, Utah. Just moved here about a year ago. And I have 3 kids, and my oldest just turned 18 and is about to leave home. It's her senior year. And so I'm in the midst of figuring out what it's like to be a mom of an adult. And it's a little bittersweet. I can't decide if I'm okay with the idea that they're moving on, but I'm sure I will learn and figure all that out.
Awesome. Tracy's still eating. So Lindsay. And then Tracy, you have to stop eating for a second. Okay.
Lindsay Wright. I live in Murray, Utah. Mom of 5. My oldest is 19. She'll be 20 this year. So yes, I totally get it, Julie. It's a weird spot to be. Anyways, just super excited to be here. I was so jealous, and now I get to be here.
Oh, I'm so glad you're here. So glad. Okay, Tracy.
Okay. Sorry for my eating. I have a class at 11, and then I have this from 12 to 1:30, and then I teach MDM level 2 from 2 to 3:30, and then I have a meeting from 3:30 to 5, and then I teach at 7. So
Gosh.
I have to eat sometime.
Hey, I was finishing my lunch too. No worries.
I have my smoothie and
yeah. I have to eat lots of vitamin C. And so I've been making lots of smoothies with oranges and stuff in it, but
good.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm Tracy Hyde, and I'm super excited you're here with us, Lindsay. That was a surprise for me. That's so fun. And the 3 of us, Lindsay, Julie, and I have been in a lot of discussions together through the years.
Yeah.
And so you're going to love Lindsay, Jolene, and Shelly. They're just awesome. And so, yeah, I have 5 kids and a couple out of the house and 3 here. And we kind of we've had some COVID-like symptoms this last week. So half of us are on one side of the house and half on the other. And anyway, trying to keep the rest healthy. So it's kind of not been fun. So one day our symptoms will go away and we'll be able to leave this part of the house. So
yeah, it's called the resurrection. Just kidding.
The millennium will be done with this.
Right. Okay, let's get into this. What would you call this? This modest proposal. Let's get into this. As a mom, what did this do for you? This reading. I loved my conversation with the students yesterday. So one of the students said at first, they said, hey, I was just looking at all his math and all his reasoning, and he's got some really good points. And I said, yeah, he does, Elijah. Do you agree with him? Is it a good idea? And he says, well, if you just take away the idea, you could look at the reasoning, and he's got some great points. And I said, what are you trying to say? Anyway, it was very, very interesting to talk to youth about this. What were your thoughts about this reading? Your first thoughts?
I just thought it was fun.
Okay.
I only took one pass at it. But I love satire. So one of my favorite satirists is Andrew Clavin. So I just imagined his voice reading this, and I just had a really good time.
Yeah.
But as far as math goes, he's talking about 12-pound babies, and I've had a 10-pound baby, and I would not recommend it to anyone. So I don't know if we can trust the logic.
Well, but he's talking about, is he?
He says they're 12 pounds when they're born, and
That's
1 year of
true.
good nursing is a 28-pound baby.
That's true.
Perfect.
But then he does say also that you save 12 pounds money-wise in selling them at age 1. Doesn't he say that somewhere? Or did I get that wrong? Oh, okay. So he says, so this is on the second page. Do we all have kind of the same? Okay, it's still a Dover. I don't know, Shelley, if yours is a Dover one, but it's my second page. It's a shorter paragraph. It says, I am assured of our merchants, or by our merchants, that a boy or girl before 12 years old is no saleable commodity. And even when they come home to this age, they will not yield above 3 pounds, or 3 pounds, 2 shillings, 6 something. I don't know what the D means. At most on the exchange, which cannot turn to account either to the parents or kingdom, the charge of nutriment and rags having been at least 4 times that value. So if you think of 3 pounds and you times it by 4, it's 12. So he's talking, I mean, there's some math there. There's math in other places as well, but I was looking at this one, and if they do sell the children, they're saving 12 pounds of not in money, of not feeding them or dressing them. And then they're going to get 3 pounds on top of that by selling them. So that looks kind of decent, doesn't it? When did he write this? Did anybody figure that out?
Well, this says 1729 in my book.
Yes. So I had to write mine in because it didn't say it. So written 1729. Do we know what's going on in England? And this is actually Ireland, but do we know the relationship between England and Ireland and what's going on? Did anybody look that up by any chance?
I don't know the exact relationship with Ireland or England and stuff, but I know that just the Irish Parliament is who I think he was writing this to,
Mhm.
and trying to get them to, I mean, it's obviously a metaphor. And for him, he thought it would sound, so horrendous and so ridiculous that, that's what satire is, like so completely ridiculous that it helps you see the point of something that maybe you weren't seeing through. So that um so that he could just get the point across that we are exploiting them as if they aren't people, in the rents that they're getting charged and the ways that they're able to make money, the ways that just where they're at in their life. We just watched Les Mis, the movie with Hugh Jackman, the other day, and like there's the scene, where all the people are grabbing onto the carriages, with the rich people and just like begging, and you can just see that, in the book as you're reading, when he's the opening page of this, and he talks about the mothers in the streets, and it's highly annoying to these people that are wealthy, like to just be clamored upon, and because begging is their only way to get any kind of subsistence, or to live. And so yeah, my kids are like, what is that? Why are they doing that? It's just so foreign to them, to think that someone would have to beg. Like, it's just interesting having to explain to your kids like situations like that, that's the only thing left to them. But I thought it was really interesting though. My mom has recently just in the last year or two gotten into just like a lot of the political stuff that's like the QAnon stuff and things like that, stuff that I just can't even, I can't engage, I can't get into it, but she's always sending me things or telling me things. And I couldn't believe how much this reminded me of, like, and I don't even know if I can say the word right, but like the adrenochrome or whatever it is. Have you guys heard of that?
I'm sad to say I haven't. No.
Well, it's this
Oh.
terrible idea, and I don't know if I'll even explain it well, because I don't know that much about it other than just what I've heard a few people tell me about. I haven't looked into it or researched it, but apparently, like, that's the big that's kind of what QAnon is based upon. That's their big secret, is that they're drinking the blood of children somehow. They think it's like the fountain of youth, and that's what like a lot of these political things are hiding, is this idea that they're eating children, that they're stealing children, and using them for power and to live longer and to be healthier, and doing that with children. And so I thought it was super, I don't know, just interesting hearing her talk about that, and things that are at least theories. I don't know what the truth, or I have no idea how far it goes, but that is something that people are talking about right now, that's something that they think is being hid by these really celebrities and high profile people and rich people. It's like you get so rich, you have everything that money can buy, and they're like, what's the next thing? I can buy more years on my life, or more power that way. So I don't know.
Yeah, your last three words, I don't know. It's like, I don't know why people would even do that. And where is their focus in life, and what is their understanding of first principles? I didn't know about this. So,
But even more obvious, we still tend to think that children, not we in general, are expendable, right? Like abortion rates are through the roof, and child trafficking, and like you don't even have to go into the deep abyss of QAnon to see, that in some cases we don't value children. In other cases, like this has been the best time in the history of the world to be a child, right? Like there's so many protections, and
true.
Right, but on the other hand, but then that they're just expendable. You can have an abortion, no problem.
So he used the satire to wake people up, like we've already discovered. Something, I don't know exactly what's happening, but somehow the economic laws of England are exploiting all of Ireland as well. And Ireland's parliament's not doing anything about it. And of course, on top of it, the conditions of the poor are so bad, they aren't doing anything for that either, because it looks so overwhelming. And I think what we're talking about here in the current situation, sometimes things look so big, we don't know what to do either. So we're all in this spot of, this is so huge, I don't know what to do. And I think that's where Ireland's parliament was. This is so big, I don't know what to do. So we're not going to do anything about it. And Jonathan Swift is on, I believe, am I wrong? Was he in Parliament? I think he was working in Parliament or something like that. I don't know if anybody looked that up. And it's been a long time since I looked that up, but I think he somehow worked in the political scene. I thought he was in Parliament, and he's wanting to wake them up. So does anybody know what the outcome of this proposal was? Did anybody look it up? Do a quick Google search and see what the outcome was of Jonathan Swift's A Modest Proposal, and see what you can find.
So I've got it, just Wikipedia, but it created a backlash within the community. The work was aimed at the aristocracy and they responded in turn. So it sounds like the aristocracy got really angry.
Very angry. And Parliament, if I remember correctly, Parliament didn't do much. It didn't do hardly anything for the people. So why do you think we're discussing it? If it wasn't, so most of the time when we're reading, what do we call this? Original sources, we're reading them because they have a huge influence on us, on our civilization. If Jonathan Swift's work didn't make much of a difference, it did cause this backlash. But why do you think we would read something like this? I mean, I don't have an answer that you have to guess in my brain. This is like opened up discussion. Why do you think it would be important to read?
Well, I think it was like what we were talking about last time. It's a good example of someone who saw something wrong in society and wanted to do something about it, and he used his writing to do that. And so we too can hone our writing skills, and we don't necessarily need to use satire, but it's just a good example of standing up for a cause. I guess we do have children killed in abortions every day, so someone could write a piece of satire on that might be similar, but it just gives us a good example of that type of political activism.
Yeah, he did something about, he saw this problem, he did something about it. I'm just going to add that to our class notes. I'll start to take some notes here. Anything else? This could actually coincide with this idea of mission, right? If anybody has this book that has all of his satirical works, so this is not all of them, but you can see that he wrote something about the Battle of the Books, and this is all about the ancient writings and the modern writings and what he comes up with. And it's fun. It's a longer one. Then A Meditation Upon a Broomstick, which I have not read. I'd like to. A Discourse Concerning the Mechanical Operation of the Spirit. I have not read. I want to. This one I have. An Argument Against Abolishing Christianity in England. And if you go to that page where he talks about it, right at the front of this, it says, an argument to prove that the abolishing of Christianity in England may, as things now stand, be attended with some inconveniences and perhaps not produce those many good effects proposed thereby. So you can see that he's going to be against that. And I think he has a way about making light of very important things, but because he's making light of it, it becomes more interesting to read.
Well, it's so ridiculous, like even when you ask questions about it, like, what's the proposal? It's like, it's hard to even answer. It's just like, well, it's a ridiculous thought.
Yeah.
But I noticed as I was reading, like, he just adds in so many things that are actually happening. Like I was struck with the fact that, like, he said, also be great because husbands will respect their wives more and they won't kick them and beat them when they're pregnant because it might lead to a miscarriage. Now, if there's money riding on it and you're just like, that is awful, but that really happens. That was really happening. Or the other one was when he calls them papists, which is, a derogatory word just for the Catholics or whatever. Like, we got to get rid of the papists anyway. But that really is a word that people used and talk, they would talk about and be like, oh, they're a dang papist. We don't want them around here. And like, when he puts it in there, it's just so ridiculous. Like, yeah, this baby's going to grow up and just be a papist anyway. So we're going to, anyway, just so he puts like really real stuff and real things that you deal with and then puts it in this ridiculous format so that he can call out even more than maybe he would have otherwise.
Yeah. And what Lindsay read online about the backlash, it's interesting that the truth hurt them because they would be the ones that are calling out the names, the derogatory remarks.
The wicked take the truth to be hard. But also, right, this is the modern comedian, right? They take the truth, they put it in an amusing format, and we are censoring the comedians, right? Because the truth hurts. It's hitting a little close to home. You can't say that because that, that's not politically correct, or, and we're losing these voices that could help us see things. It's funny because it's silly and it's funny and it's not true, but on the same hand, it's helping us to understand truths on a deeper level. Did I make sense there? Right? Like it's on the surface, it's, what am I trying to say, Julie? But it's helping us to see the truth through maybe some hyperbole of the truth.
Yeah, the way that I looked at it, hold on, let me is that it seems like there's this spectrum of barbarism, like you can just let people starve, or you might as well just make a profit on them and eat them for dinner, and this is cannibalism. So it's on this spectrum, and he's attached them like this high society, very cultured, they think they're advanced, with this spectrum of barbarism, or the cannibalism, and it helps them find that truth, like you were saying, Lindsay. It helps them see that deeper truth, that maybe what they're doing, just letting people starve, is barbaric. It is in that same realm. So it opens up their eyes, even though it is quite ridiculous.
Oh, I love that comment. I hadn't thought of that. Yeah.
In a way, like if he just came out and tried to talk about it, like with, not in that way, they wouldn't accept it at all. They wouldn't even, but yeah, you read something and you go, wait, what? And you hear this ridiculous thing, then you have to dive in. And then before you know it, you're like, oh, he's just connected it in a way that you can't unconnect now.
No. And now
people would take the time to read it because it's entertaining. It's scandalous, or I don't know, sensationalized.
And people are bound to be talking about it in their circles and thinking about it. And it's, so he has become an influence in that way. Maybe Parliament didn't make laws that changed things. Evidently they do now, but there are better laws there in Ireland, but obviously the ridiculousness of it was causing people to talk about it. And maybe that's what he wanted to do. Okay, so no one put down their EQQs yet, but I'm hoping that you can copy from what you've written or what you can think right now. Take us to a page number or a quote or question that you have or something interesting that you wanted to bring up. I ended up talking to Shelley at the beginning, so I didn't really explain to everybody to get on to the site or the Google Doc to write down some things. By the way, I had my youth look up what 12 pounds translates to. And today, 12 pounds back then in 1729 would be $983. It's still not a lot of money. But anyway. Oh, good. Got some stuff going on here.
Not a lot of money.
Yeah, if it's just for one meal, that's a lot of money for your dinner, $900.
Yeah, but this is 12 pounds to feed and clothe them. But for how long? And 3 pounds would only be a fourth of that. So selling them, and I guess at 1 year old, this is so terrible to talk about, but wouldn't that be more than one meal? Oh,
You were supposed to impress your friends and invite people over.
I guess that's right. That's what he says. That's right. That is right. Okay. Let's go with Tracy's thought right now, and hopefully the rest of you can put down something.
So this is just in light of what we were talking about, this writing being a good example of political activism, but what current issue would Jonathan Swift's satire bring to light? Sorry, this isn't very well written. What current issue would Jonathan Swift's satire bring to light, particularly the absurdities we have fallen into because we're breaking our first principle? Okay, you're adding that for me.
Yeah.
Will you say that again, Tracy?
What current issues would Jonathan Swift's satire bring to light, particularly the absurdities we have fallen into because we're breaking a first principle? I'm going to put today.
I'm going to add this to the oh, you requested access to the doc. Okay. Oh, I don't get my emails while I'm teaching class unless somebody tells me. Oh, there it is. Okay. Open sharing settings. That's true. We got to get you all situated here. Wait a minute. This is the youth one. I'm going to still send it to you. But
let me find the
yeah, so if you go into the Google Classroom and your class information stuff, it's almost, I think it's the last one, the bottom one, where it says Adult Humanities. I think, if I'm right. Did you see it?
I don't see Adult Humanities.
Under class information and materials. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to get on here and I'm just going to share to Lindsay, L-I-N. lwright607@gmail.com.
Yep.
Okay, so watch for an email to see if you can get on there. So I also put that question in the chat box. So let's answer this. What current issue would Jonathan Swift's satire bring to light today? I guess what current issue right now is breaking a first principle that we can think of? This is a really good question, Tracy. Was it December?
I was thinking about this question just because at the dinner table, a lot of my kids will come out with these very satirical ideas that just augment a lot of the things that we see in society. So that's why I was thinking of it.
I love it.
Just because they exaggerate it, and songs they've heard or ideas and different things. Anyway.
Oh, fun. I miss those dinner time meal discussions. I don't have them anymore. Oh, like no one lives at our house anymore except for Dave and I. We kind of rattle around here. Okay, does anybody know what happened on December 1st last month? Something in the Supreme Court. Was it Missouri? Mississippi? Was trying to repeal the abortion. I don't know all of the details. They're kind of fuzzy now, but I was writing a college paper about this, but there were a bunch of articles all over the web about abortion because they were taking it to the Supreme Court to say, let's not define abortion as a law, if I understand correctly. So you'll have to do your research to find out the truth, because I can't remember exactly what it was. Because my paper was actually focused on something else. But this is a current issue, a big issue right now. And what first principle does it break? Abortion.
So we have a right to life.
Yeah. And even an unborn baby has a right to life, even though they don't understand. Yeah. So
If we took it further, I guess, like it could be it's like an awful satire like Swift's, but I mean, to benefit the mothers, they should be able to take home that part of them that they aborted. And I don't know, science could use some of those things.
yeah,
It's their
frame
property.
it. Yeah.
That's another terrible analogy, but.
Well, it's terrible because we are taking something so sacred and beautiful, but we're trying to make it look in a way so absurd. Why would we even be doing this? And when we make it look absurd, it brings to light of why it's so bad, why it's so wrong. Yeah, that's good. It's interesting. In my paper, I discovered that women are so fascinated with equality with men that they want to make their bodies just like men. Pregnancy takes you away. You're not able to work very well. You're not able to think very well, eat very well. It's all so hard. And you can't sing in choirs. I remember that. I love being in my ward choir, and it was such a great choir. And I remember 6 months on, I couldn't sing anymore because my lungs didn't work, and it was just awful. So pregnancy is hard, but women are wanting this equality with men's bodies. And the way they can do that, let me go back a little bit. So women go through this of what I explained, and then they have to have a baby, and then they have all this responsibility. But the men who got the girl pregnant, they can walk away and they don't have responsibility. They do, but do you see what I'm saying? And so the women want that same equal
Freedom.
freedom. Yeah, they want to just be able to walk away, no responsibility. They don't want to have to go through pregnancy. They don't, but they want to have that sexual intercourse. And so they can do whatever they want now with no responsibility. And adoption, or not adoption, abortion lets them do that. That's almost exactly what, I mean, that he could easily write something about this.
And
Gosh.
then the other current like malady that I was thinking of too was just the sorry, now I've lost it. What was it? Oh, just political correctness. As far as like what you can say and what's appropriate to say, and it has gotten to be absurd. So you could write some little piece about jelly beans being a certain color in the store, and you're not supposed to call them that. Anyway, I don't know. I can't think of anything off the top of my head, but I'm wondering what the first principle is that's broken there with political correctness. It's just become so absurd, because that's what Thomas Reed says is when we break first principles, we fall into absurdities. So what are the first principles, or a first principle that we're breaking with this political correctness, or I guess would hate speech fall into it? I don't know, exactly what's entailed there, but anyway, I'd be curious to hear your thoughts on that.
That's going to be a good question. That's really going to stretch me. Political correctness. What first principle are we breaking? Do we all understand what a first principle is? I know Lindsay does. She gave a whole big presentation on it. Tracy and I were in on that. A first principle is a principle that is broken down to the very root, that it can't be broken down any further. So agency is inherent gift to us from God, and it is a first principle. You can't go any further than that. We all have the right to act and the responsibility of the choice that we chose. We have to deal with that consequence. So agency is a first principle. What first principle are we breaking when we are setting laws for political correctness, do you think?
I guess included in this would be like the pronouns. My mom had to fill out this thing for a medical procedure, and she had to say if she was a he, she, they. I mean, it had like 5 different pronouns she could choose from, and to her it felt insulting.
Yeah, I'm going to add to it gender.
So I'm wondering if, I mean, it could be breaking several first principles, but I wonder if one of them has to do with truth, like truth exists. And when we have to skate around the truth for these different political reasons or personal preferences or things, then we're denying truth. We're like making up our own truth.
Yeah, I like that. Anybody have any other thoughts?
A lot of people, original source, older works, when they talk about first principles, they talk about honesty. So that Tracy, you made me think, with this idea of truth, that we have a responsibility to be honest. with each other. But then Julie, you said something about making political correctness into law. So then we're getting into the area of justice, right? Is that it can't be a just law because it's not based in truth. It infringes on agency, right? So we're touching on several things there.
Yeah, touching on justice. What about conscience? The first principle of that right of conscience.
That's such a tricky one, right? Because my conscience may say something, we talked about this, different than your conscience.
Mm-hmm.
And so how do we respect each other's conscience?
Right. So I was raised in the suburbs of LA and suburbs of Kansas City. And if you know anything about those two areas, there's a lot of Black people. And I had some of my best friends, Natasha was Black. And she was my Black friend. And I got to say it. And we talked about Black people and we talked about white people, and everyone was fine with it. I just grew up saying that. And I had another Black friend in Lawrence, Kansas, is where I lived as a 13, 14, and 15 12, 13, and 14-year-old before we moved to Utah. Then I didn't see any more Black people, but I can't say the word Black people anymore. And yet that was the way we used to describe each other. And I didn't see anything wrong with it. They didn't see anything wrong with it. I'm older than all of you. I did live in a time where there was still some interesting segregation leftovers in the Midwest. I do remember that. And I do remember that there was prejudice, not as much as you'd see in the South, but I also had a lot of friends that were, I can't say it, that were that color. I can't say it. And yet my conscience says, this is how I describe it. I have a friend who's Baptist. That's how I describe her. She's my Baptist friend. But I don't know if that's politically correct because we're not allowed to put any labels on each other. So you're right. I grew up in a different place than all of you did. You probably didn't have very many Black friends. If you grew up in Utah or Idaho.
I was going to say I did. I grew up near Cleveland, Ohio, and I would have experiences going to the dentist where I was the only white person.
Yes, exactly.
And so it was, so I understand what you're saying. And so why is it such a big deal now? And what is it that we've lost?
So yeah, what is it?
Well, and looking for the first principle, I feel the same way about conscience as I do about when you said honesty, because I feel like a lot of these people are like, well, I'm just being honest. Like, this is my honest opinion. And I feel like those are so hard. They get so mixed up for me sometimes trying to think of that.
Well, and is it because of the motive that we have in saying it? Because I could say it with a motive of hatred and prejudice, or I can say it with a motive of endearment. So is there a first principle connected to that?
Maybe like the two are honor truth and, well, I guess these would be principles, but honor truth and love one another.
Love one another.
And, you know, maybe they're more the first principles. We should honor truth and we should love one another. Because those are just those broad first principles.
Is there anything that God has told us to do that has to do with not calling people or not labeling people?
I guess we're to be one, we're to be a Zion people. So one in Jesus Christ. But then God also loves diversity. And so we can celebrate our diversity as well. And there's, I mean, everywhere around us, we look and we see these things where there are these opposite ends of the spectrum, and Father in heaven, Jesus Christ, they know how to find, I guess it would be the golden mean, the balance there, or the right way to approach those and not to get too extreme on either end.
Mhm.
He did tell us not to judge unrighteously.
Perfect.
I'm asking the question in my brain, why love one another? Why should we love one another? And it's because we're all God's children. That is our unifying identity. That's the truth of who we are.
So
but not everybody knows that. So I think you have to, we're all in different places on the path. And so being respectful. Somebody who doesn't know as much. That didn't sound right.
No, I love it. It's helping me think of something. So the political correctness is coming down from who? From what?
It's coming from society.
It's coming from society.
But it's not coming from all of society. It's
No.
coming from a particular portion of society, namely, I'm assuming, educated, good intentioned people. They're trying to make things better, but they're actually making things worse.
So then let's compare it. Where are we getting this 1 through 7? Honor truth, love one another. By the way, are you on this document yet, Lindsay?
Yep.
Okay. Be one in Jesus Christ. God loves diversity. Celebrate it. Not judge unrighteously. We're all God's children. Unifying identity. Respectful. Those 7 are coming from who? God. So is there a difference when we have morals coming from a government than morals coming from God? Is there something here that maybe we need to see?
Should government determine morality?
That's a good question.
Right? Is that their proper role? Is to determine what is moral? I mean, I think it is their role to defend what is moral. But who's making the rules here?
Right. Whoops.
We should be a nation under God. I guess we should look to God for our morality.
Okay. So what's the percentage of people that would do that in this nation?
I don't know.
I think it's higher than we think.
That's what I think too. I think
Okay.
those negative voices are just really loud.
I did look this up last week. I think 46% of the people are Christian in our country, and 27% go to church. If anybody sees something different than that, great. I'm open to it. I was just asking my husband the other day, like we were talking about morals, and I asked him, what's the percentage of God-fearing people in this country? And we looked it up, and I thought that's what I saw was 46%.
I've seen that. I think it's true, but I think it doesn't represent what I don't think you have to be I could be wrong. I don't think you have to be a church going Christian to believe in the first principles.
Mm-mm.
Right. So even though there's only 27% of us who regularly go to church, there's more people than that who believe, that murder is wrong, that we should be kind, that,
Mm-hmm.
right.
I want to point you all to an idea that is going to move nations to one or the other revolution. Okay. The revolution like France or a revolution like the Americans. And that was when what the majority believes is actually, it's a democracy kind of a thing. What the majority believes is what's going to move that zeitgeist. That's a German word for like the spirit of thought, the spirit of a movement of thought. Okay. And that's like the zeitgeist of today is kind of what we were talking about with this political correctness. That's where we're going. That's the movement. So, I lost the thought. So everything that we're talking about right now has everything to do with why the Americans went this way and why the French went this way. And it has everything to do with the morals and beliefs of the majority of the people. And just remember that as we go. So even though both the political correctness is actually playing toward a first principle, honor truth, love one another, be one in Jesus Christ. I don't know if they say that one, but basically not judging unrighteously. There's a lot of things. But there's a difference when it comes down from government and a difference when it comes down from God. Shelley.
I keep thinking about the family, like just how we are to be families. It made me think about it when I read the proposal too. And just when we were studying the family, the proclamation just a couple of weeks ago at the end of the year, I heard someone say, I don't remember who, in all our studies, and they quoted an apostle who had said it, like we'd always thought of like the three pillars of the, like our three pillars of our foundation are the creation and the fall, and then our redemption and, the atonement and the redemption to come back. But there was an apostle, and I can't remember who gave a talk, and he said those three, and then he said there's four pillars, and I was like, wait, what? I thought there was three, and he added the family as one of those pillars. I think it might have been Christopherson, but I'm not sure. But even looking at this like abortion, like I'm wondering, like, is the family a first principle that God gives us, like this way to come back? And I don't know that how it helps with political correctness, but it does make me think of Swift's model, like when you have a family unit and everyone honors and respects the family and morality, God, like with the Israelites, they ruled as families. Even the priesthood was, I don't know the right words, but the priesthood they used was a familial priesthood, that it was, Abraham and Sarah together, and they're making decisions, and their government was coming from the families, like it came down in a familial way. And I don't have anything articulated, but I just keep thinking about it when we're trying to define this principle, that maybe the first principle of the family having something to do with what we're moving away from in our society.
Yes, I'm going to add this as family. And first of all, yes, it is a first principle. It's one of the points of the doctrine of Christ.
And addresses what you're talking about women wanting to be equal, and really just even just like saying, like science agrees with it, that the family is the best place to raise children, that men languish when they're not married and not taking care of a family, that women really, I mean, even though they want all of this freedom and they deserve freedom to do what their passions are, what they want to do, when they're outside of families, things break down and don't go as well.
And we see a lot of the major problems today, I think you can trace back to the root of we haven't been honoring family. In fact, the government has purposely done things that have negatively affected the family.
Yeah.
And I think I think that is a root. There's not one thing I can think of that's not a root of the problem.
Yeah. I just finished reading a book called The Conservative Mind by Russell Kirk. And time and time again, he continually says, one of the first conservative principles besides the love of God is the traditional family. And he says every idea that's not conservative is trying to destroy that unit. And we see that happening. You just said that. I'm just reiterating what you're saying. Trying to destroy the family. Well, okay. So do you think we hashed this out? Do you think, the first principle obviously is the destruction of family. It's breaking the family. But also skirting around truth. I think we've come up with a really good list here. Is there anything we can add?
I think that's a really good list. I think it's really interesting to think that it is like a group of first principles. It's not just one first principle that's at risk here and or that's being broken. And so I think it illustrates how first principles and principles really are woven together. And when you weaken one, you weaken another, and vice versa. And I think this just illustrates that really well.
Mm-hmm.
I was thinking of one more. And I don't know, because one of the ways I think about first principles, right, Julie, that you taught me is the rights, those 4 rights: life, liberty, property, and conscience. Mm-hmm. Right. And so if I'm looking at property, so these children, really are property, but it's being twisted, like it's playing on that, like they're your property, so you should be able to make money off of it. But the truth is that we're responsible for our property, to take care of it, to make it better, to increase it, right? And so I think there's
and parents looking at children as property breaches their right to life. So it's breaching a first principle.
Ooh, yes.
The words coming to my mind are dominion or stewardship.
Mm-hmm. I like that.
I like that too. And I think of that scripture on righteous dominion and how it's very common for us as humans to, whenever we have a little authority, we practice that unrighteous dominion. Okay, what'd you say? Dominion and what? Stewardship? Okay, I love it. Beautiful. So in this, his proposal is breaking that first principle of the right to property, the right to life. Yeah. Property as life. We saw
Well,
Okay.
not the entitlement of property. The right includes the responsibility.
right. Excellent.
And
Not
the right to acquire property, not the right to have, like, be given the property. Is that kind of what you mean,
Yeah,
Lindsay?
it's the self property. Those children have the right to their own bodies. It's a property that's been given to them to care for. Yes.
But also they belong to their parents, right? And we shouldn't be
Do
using
they? Do they belong to the parents, or are they a responsibility of their parents?
the responsibility.
Yeah.
Like we have stewardship,
Yes.
right? It's why we get so upset when the government tries to tell us how to educate our kids or what to do with our kids, right? Because we do have that stewardship. And he's in his satire, he's saying they're yours, you can do whatever you want with them. But the truth is we can't do whatever we want with them. We have a responsibility to take care of them.
Absolutely. This is good. This is good. Okay. Tracy, what do you think? This was your question.
Yeah, thanks
Pardon?
everyone for making this list. I think it's good to practice this, because then it just makes it easier to approach other issues and things. And so it's interesting with first principles how it always just always comes back to those, same ones, it seems like, over and over again.
I know. Life, liberty, property, and conscience. And that's probably why our Thomas Jefferson copied John Locke and put in those as the rights in the Declaration.
As well as that it's, he also brings up natural law, and that there's this law that's higher. And so that takes into account, like, honoring truth.
Yeah, I'm just going to add that in, because we didn't put that in. Natural law. Law of God. Perfect. Okay. Was this Shelley number one? I think so, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
take it away, Shelley.
Okay, so this quote jumped out at me. I'm not even sure if I'm reading it right, but what I took from this, I grant this food will be somewhat dear, meaning, the babies and the children, and therefore very proper for landlords who, as they have already devoured most of the parents, seem to have the best title to the children. And so I took that as like a little cut of truth that he was trying to put forward, saying the landlords are already devour the parents, meaning they're the ones causing them to have to beg. They can't get ahead. They're not able to make money off their land. They're charging too high of rents and they can't survive. And so they're being devoured in their own way, which I think is his metaphor for the whole book, is that the parents are being devoured. So now we should naturally have title to their children.
I have this marked too. I just wanted to tell everybody it's on my third page. If anybody wants to find it, it's just one little tiny paragraph with one sentence. So your question.
So my question is, when he said that, I thought, where do I see people taken advantage of or devoured in maybe our economic systems or our our, I don't know what the word is, the status systems of, just how we are in communities. And we have several here just in our Magic Valley. I grew up, my dad farmed, and he had a certain, he was a foreman for a farmer, and this certain farmer only preferred to hire illegal immigrants to work for him, because they would work for so much cheaper. He wouldn't have to, report them or pay the taxes and all these things. So my dad would be out there working with them. My dad learned Spanish from working with them. And so he would have to do all their grocery shopping, all of their stuff for them, because they couldn't, even go into the store. They didn't have identification or papers or things like that. And they lived in this little trailer house out in the middle of just these hundreds and hundreds of acres in the middle, and they would just farm out there. And I remember going to the store with my dad and just having, you know, stacks and stacks of tortillas and all these different food that they would order from him, and he would take it out there. And they and I'm gonna cry talking about this just because it's so tender to me, because my dad, like, I feel like he just showed such great love to them and treated them like friends and equals. And that's how I just saw it. I couldn't understand what was going on at the time because I was young. I didn't understand why they couldn't do their own shopping or go to the store or do things like that. But they thought he looked like Chuck Norris. And so every time he'd come, they'd yell Chuck Norris. So he'd always go up and karate chop their door down, like kick it in to come in and bring their groceries. And I don't know. I just remember going with him for that. But I do remember the day that there was like a, you know, Border Patrol came and made their rounds, and they came out to the farm, and my dad telling the story, you know, he saw them just like pushing their faces in the dirt and just treating them so roughly. He thought so unnecessarily roughly, and it just broke his heart because they were his friends and they got deported and you know, all kinds of different things. But so that was just one story just growing up, and we just have, you know, a really high Hispanic population here in our valley. And I hear it all the time, like people choose their schools. Oh, you don't want to go to that school, it has a really high Hispanic population, or you don't want to do this. And like, I just see like these separations and just wonder if, you know, how these people are to get ahead and what can be done to help. And we also, because of CSI's refugee program, have that big debate going on in Twin Falls as well about bringing refugees here and how we should be helping them. And if there's a lot of people that don't want them here and don't want to provide that for these people that have nowhere else to go. So those debates are really real and alive, like in our town right now. And I know there's a lot of people that are doing things for them. I have a lot of friends that adopt refugee families, which I think is awesome. But this quote was just making me think of it in a bigger light, like
Devouring.
yeah, these people that just don't have a way right now to get ahead and have to be put into these systems where it keeps them down. And then we naturally have title to their children, because when parents are down, it's hard for children to thrive. There's a third one that is a big deal in this area too. Jason and I've talked a lot about, because he saw it on his mission in St. George. And that's like a lot of negative talk about people that are really upset about people from Seattle or Portland or California moving here. And like just the other day, I saw on the back of someone's car, like they had California plates, and it said, "Don't worry, I'm just driving through, I'm not stopping," or whatever. And to me, I think this is just like our greatest opportunity. Like they left those places for a reason, and they feel something here. And rather than being, you know, negative about how they're making our house prices go up, or we don't want Californians here, you know, bringing their culture and all these things, that we could maybe we could really embrace that and start speaking like that, you know, around other people. So those are my three areas I was thinking of.
I love that. You live in Idaho, and I know that my Shay is a student in this class, Lindsay, and she texted me. She's on her way down to a couples retreat, so she's not coming to class, but she lives in Meridian, Idaho, and most of her neighbors are from California. And she says that attitude is there as well, where she lives. Wow. Now, refugees. You're a refugee city. Well, Twin Falls is. So is Salt Lake. Lindsay, Tracy, have you seen any of this attitude toward the refugees as well? Or I don't live in Salt Lake. I don't know.
I haven't. I've just seen people welcoming them with open arms. I mean, we mentored a couple refugee families and had a really great experience with one of them, not as great with the other, because it just depends on if they want to be helped or not.
Mm-hmm.
And we've also, this is a different issue, but kind of similar, like Outskirts worked with the homeless, sheltering families and things too, and trying to find you know, shelter for them. There are churches that before COVID that they would stay in, like for a week, they'd stay in, not the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, but other denominations would open up their churches. And then a lot of the members in the area of our church would then bring meals every night and get to know the refugees, and, or not refugees, the homeless families, and So, I mean, that's what I've seen around. I guess I just don't really run in like all the different circles, but people trying to help out where they can. And there's a Swahili speaking branch that our neighboring stake, it's actually part of their branch, even though it's not in their actual vicinity or their state boundaries. And like this branch goes on Pioneer Truck with them, the stake basketball. I mean, they're a part of their stake, and they really do a lot for these refugees that are coming in from the Congo. And so I think there are a lot of people doing some really great things. But I know it's not like that in every country. I know it's really hard. And in England, when I was on my mission, that was 20 years ago, there were whole cities of Afghanis. And I know that I did hear people voicing kind of some bitter feelings about that. But so I know it is an issue, but that's a tough one. But we do the best we can to support people in the situations that we all find ourselves in. What the policies should be, I think, is difficult for the people making the lawmakers making the policies. I think that's really hard.
Well, that was what was I going to say, because I think people and churches can do a lot of good. I think the government often does not do good. You know, they've made laws and policies where we have families in our ward that they want to get out of the life that they're living, but if they get a job that pays a little bit more, then they can't keep their apartment, they can't qualify for the benefits that they need, you know. And so they're like, they're definitely swimming upstream against, you know, all these policies. And so I think that's
so policies. Whoops. So government policies get in the way.
Usually.
Yeah, all the organizations we worked with, like Asian Association and Family Promise, they're just nonprofit groups. They're not associated with the government. And I did see that a lot on my mission too, is just people who wouldn't get married because if they did, then they wouldn't have enough money to survive and or get a job. You know, you lose money if you go and get a job. And so those policies were really harming the family and harming personal growth. So let's go to the principle section here. What first principle or principles, I'm just going to say, are being broken here? I did want to tell you, Shelley, that Dave and I, living in Burley, Idaho, working in the Spanish branch for all those many years that we were there, and watching people that we were teaching get deported, just like taken and separated from family, a father taken away from his wife and children, and just watching those things, and then watching a man come and work and be honest in his work. He falls in love with someone in the branch. They're so much in love, but they've been working hard to pay thousands of dollars to get their citizenship or whatever it is. And then as soon as they get married, all that money that they paid goes away. And now they have to it doesn't go away. The government keeps it. And then they have to apply and pay that money again. And so here we're trying to get people married and in the temple, and we are doing that, but it's a huge cost because they're being devoured. They're being devoured by the dishonest laws that are happening. So we got to see a lot of that. And it made us really question some of the processes that our government requires for the people to become legal here. It just doesn't go with first principles or natural law of God. So we saw that too. And I have so many stories of beautiful people, and the devouring of them that was happening is difficult.
So what first principles are being broken here?
I think a big one is just personal responsibility, because when the government takes that away, then it hinders our growth. Just like we were talking about those examples of the government giving handouts for certain situations that undermine the family.
Yeah. Good.
I think you could say love. I think
Can we say Christ-like love?
Christ-like love, right? Like we're not understanding what true love is. We're creating policy that we think is loving, or maybe they're not trying to do that, but it's not actually, welfare. It seems like it's loving to help people, but we're not helping them in the right way. We're not truly loving them, because the things that we're giving them aren't the right kinds of things often.
I feel like maybe I don't know how to say this as the first principle. Like, I feel like it's the golden rule. Like, if we were ever in that situation where you happen to leave your country, or you're moving to a new country to just try to make money and survive and raise your family in a better place, you would hope that there would be a way to do that. And it seems like people become very I don't want to say selfish, but just very like ownership, like, this is ours. We were here first. We don't want you bringing your culture. We don't want you here. And maybe it's because Twin Falls is a little bit of a smaller community, but it's calmed down a little bit now, because we haven't had such big numbers of refugees coming in like we were there for a while. But every week, in the newspaper, there was just these opinion articles where they just would rant about all these things, like, this is going to change and you guys are going to be sorry, and we don't want this for our valley and our community. This is why our community has been so good, is because this stuff has been out. And there's something about, like, we have it and we don't want it to change, instead of this inclusiveness that we could open up, and maybe we could combine efforts to have something even better.
Isn't that interesting that that's coming from a generally Christian community?
Yeah. And it's not everybody. I'm not saying everybody, but yeah, there's just, definitely like
the zeitgeist.
Two factions. Yeah, for sure. Like, and there's a lot of people. And my sister lives in Boise, and I don't want to call her out because she's a really great person, but her and her husband they're very, very conservative, but they're very leery. And she works in the school system. She's a school psychologist. And so she's over several schools. And for her, like, when they have a refugee family come in, it's just a huge headache for her. And it's really hard when the parents don't want to learn English or the language, and they're not communicating, and they just send their kids, and then they have to figure out a way to deal with them. And so she sees a lot of problems that way, and feels negatively, I would say, more toward the system, like, just, that they're just on their own, and then they just don't succeed because they don't have the support that they need. And so she feels, I don't know, she feels a little animosity toward the fact that they just come and then, throw their kids in, but aren't really trying to assimilate, I guess. So that's some of the complaints that I hear in my own.
But I can see that, right?
Mm-hmm.
My husband's a
Yeah.
police officer, and they do tend to bring crime and bad things into the community, right? Like, he gets really frustrated, with like government assisted housing and stuff, because those are the places that the police department spends most of their time. And it's not necessarily the people's fault. I mean, some of it, Tracy, you said, a lot of it comes down to personal responsibility, but they don't even have access to the kind of education that they need to get out, to do better, to know better. So I do think, I don't think it's unfounded to not want that to come into your community, that, the bad parts, but maybe we need to focus more, what are the good things that are coming, and how can we help love people by giving them the knowledge and the education they need to get out of the bad part.
That's what I see, is this idea that if we just say, no, we don't want any of this. And I just always tell my sister that, but what if you're the only person that they come across that actually show, the opportunity you have to show them true love? Because that's what I feel like, is that I feel like they're being devoured in a way. And then we have title to those children because that's who's going to suffer. And that's when they, just like in this, they turn to begging. And it says when they get, because they're not old enough to steal yet. Once they're 6 years old, then they can steal, because they'll learn a way to survive. They have to survive somehow. And so that's what they turn to. So yeah, I think the answers are deeper than, let's just keep them out, send them somewhere else, send them to a big city where they can handle them better or whatever. And it's like, well, because we're smaller, we might have more of an opportunity here to even have more influence. I don't know.
Yeah, maybe it's an opportunity to help them instead of devouring them, help them really thrive. The first refugee family that we helped, they were from the Congo, and they had 4 kids. It was a single mom and 4 kids. And George, the second oldest of her kids, he just took responsibility for his education, and he learned English in the first 6 months. We could really communicate with him. And we'd go every week and help them with their homework. And their refugee school sounded so dedicated to helping them really, get to where they needed to be, because they'd been sitting in a refugee camp for 4 years, not really doing much. And then in the school, they had the opportunity, if they kept their grades at a certain level, they would get full ride scholarships to Westminster. So we're like, George, you've got to, do this. This is such a great opportunity. And it's just been fun to see their family thrive. And it is exciting to see a pathway. And speaking of pathways, I love the church's pathway program, that just seeing, when we were in Abu Dhabi, seeing all the new members from Africa and some of these other countries. The biggest obstacle was learning English, but within the ward, they had that in place, someone to help them with English. And then they had someone in place to help them get on the path to pathways. So if they really took responsibility, like George, they had this path. And so maybe it's welcoming people and just seeing it as an opportunity to provide a path. But where we get frustrated is when they don't take the path. Like that with our second family, they had no interest in learning the language. They just were kind of living day to day and no ambitions. And so then they just kind of do, like Lindsay, then maybe that's what Brian's seeing, is just these families that kind of just don't really take hold of the opportunities that they're given. And that's tough.
It's generational, right? They learn it from their families, who learned it from their families, right?
Well, and the government spurs it on by not requiring personal responsibility, giving those handouts. And I've bolded this one under G, this personal responsibility, because I'm realizing the government is responsible for making the people responsible by not giving out so many handouts, and we are responsible to help others, and people are responsible to learn and to be in charge of their own lives. So I think this responsibility is a huge, and I don't know where maybe agency would be the first principle. Would that be it? All of us have agency. And what's interesting is Satan's whole purpose in life is to destroy agency of man. So you can see him working through the government, through personal, and through all of us with this personal responsibility, this agency.
Well, I think he also, this is from Tresta, that he wants agency without consequences, right? He doesn't want us, he wants us to be able to do whatever we want. And the consequences, right? Like personal, like not having to take that responsibility. But I was thinking too, the government can't, this is tricky. I don't know that the government can legislate responsibility. It can do things to encourage it, but I think what it comes down to is our hearts, right? People are going to treat people according to what's in their heart, and the government you can't make a law that's going to change somebody's heart.
Mm.
And so that's up to like Tracy, you were saying with the second family, like they needed a change of heart. But you can't force it, but you also can't legislate it. Right. And so how do we first change our own hearts, change the way we perceive other people and how we love and how we accept and honor agency and stuff. But then, I think it's people's hearts, and that's the zeitgeist, Julie, that you were talking about, this cultural movement. It depends on where people's hearts are.
It does. Which goes back to what we are going to talk about this whole semester, and that is this movement of what is the majority going to believe? Where are our hearts? What are we going to build up? What are we going to destroy? And that's where we're going to go with those two.
And really quick, can I add, Julie? That's the importance of keeping religion in our governments and in our societies, because that's what educates our hearts. The government can protect rights, but can't educate our hearts.
Exactly. Which the founders instituted religion in our government, and the separation of church and state was nothing about separating and getting rid of religion. It was just about not making a state religion, like forcing people to be a Catholic or forcing people to be a member of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. That's what it meant. It didn't mean take religion out. Okay, we have to go, but I really want to, first of all, this blew me away. This whole discussion. I love it. And continue to do your part like he did and spread principles and truth. But this Pilgrim's Progress, I just really wanted to quickly explain, because I don't want it to be confusing for you. The assignment says to read either part. There's two parts. The first part is Christian going on a journey by himself through life, and he's going to meet a bunch of people like Mr. Prideful or Mr. Forgetful or whatever. I can't remember. And he's going to go through the valley of the shadow of death. And he's going to go through lots of different things and meet people. And all of those things and people have literal names. So whatever their names are literally means what they are. Like Mr. Prideful's prideful, if that makes sense. And so it says in there, you can read the first part, Christian, about Christian and his journey, or the second part, which is Christiana, his wife, goes later through this journey, and she takes their 4 sons with them. So Christian and Christiana are married, but the first part is just Christian, and that's what most people read. The second one is Christiana with her 4 children, and she has a different experience, and she brings a lot more pilgrims with her. She's kind of a missionary. But what I wanted you to do is, if you've never read the Pilgrim's Progress, I wanted you to read the first one, the first part, which is Christian. If you've read it before, I invite you to think about reading the second part if you've never read it, and choose it that way. You do not have to read both parts, just one. But we also need to know that this was one of the most influential books of our colonists. If they had any books, they had 1, 2, or 3 of them. If they had any books, it would have been the Bible. If they had 2 books, it would have been the Pilgrim's Progress. If they had 3 books, it would have been those 2 and Shakespeare. So we knew that this was super influential for our pilgrims. And this, we're talking about the ideas of the majority. Our country was based on these Christian principles of family and God. And so we're going to read that, and we're only going to read the first half of one part. And it depends on, we'll have a discussion if somebody reads the first part and somebody reads the second part, but you read half of it, we're still going to be able to get a great discussion going, if that makes sense. So does anybody have any questions? And then the next week we'll read the last half of the book. So we're going to take 2 weeks to read it. Okay, have any questions? Super influential book. It's kind of fun to listen to it while you read. So if you can find a good Audible or the free app, what's the free LibriVox? I like listening to it while I'm reading it and marking. I don't know why, it just helps me. So that's my suggestion. Okay. With that, we will go. We're 4 minutes late. Sorry.